So let's get started. On the webinar, welcome everyone to today's environment webinar. We are just so excited to have you all joining us here today, and also to have our wonderful panelists, Nina and Mary Beth, here as well to share some of their experiences from their organization. So welcome everyone. Go ahead, Madeline, next slide, please. Perfect. So first off, just some ground rules for our webinar today. First, you are all more than welcome to take as many notes during these next 45 minutes as you'd like, but just know that we'll be recording this webinar and we'll be sending that out right afterwards, in addition to posting it on our FreeWill webinar landing page. The next note, everyone, you'll probably have noticed you've been muted aside from myself, my FreeWill colleagues, and our panelists. So if you have anything to say during this webinar, please use the chat feature, as many of you already have. And also know that if you want to send a message to everyone, to just make sure that everyone or all attendees is selected. If you're having any logistical troubles, be sure to select that from everyone to Marley Hall, and she'll be able to help you there. Also, for any questions that you have along the way, we ask that you also submit those questions in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. This way we can see what is on everyone's minds. We want to make sure that this is an open, collaborative conversation throughout the whole journey. And we'll be also sure to answer those questions that you have towards the latter portion of this webinar. Perfect. Next slide, thank you. So here's our agenda for the next 45 minutes, starting with some introductions, then a quick state of the sector overview before transitioning to our panelist interview, and then ending with a question and answer session with all of you who are tuning in right now. Before we kick off as well, I wanted to give just a quick overview of who we are here at FreeWill and what we do. So we're an online fundraising platform that works with nonprofits, institutions across the country, and across so many sectors, including the environment, wildlife sectors, to really help strengthen planned and annual giving programs, one through our flagship estate planning tool, and also through our QCD and stock tools, which really facilitates gifts from individual retirement accounts and gifts from appreciated assets, respectively. So as many of you have probably heard or may not have, we are really excited by some recent news. We just recently crossed the $1 billion threshold in committed gifts to organizations and charities across the US. So we're really, really thrilled by that. And just know we're not stopping there. So just introductions, my name is Nick Kim-Skandarian. I'm a senior partner success strategist here at FreeWill, which means that I have the amazing pleasure in working with organizations across the country. And my goal is really to be sure to provide the tools, the strategy, the content for supporting the scaling of planned and annual giving programs as a means of helping organizations towards achieving their mission and vision. And so today, it's really my focus, along with Madeline's, to help build and strengthen this community of like-minded environmental wildlife organizations, and provide you with insights and just a wealth of resources, information to support you as we all continue to navigate through this uncertain time over these days. So with that, I'll kick it over to Madeline for an introduction.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Nick. I'm Madeline. I am a member of the partnerships team at FreeWill. And a little bit of background on me: before joining FreeWill, I spent about 10 years in development and major gifts fundraising, most recently at the Environmental Defense Fund. So I'm really excited to join this conversation and join all of you in helping all of us through this really difficult time, and continue to raise money and do and complete the missions that we're also focused on and that are so key now into the future. So thanks so much, and looking forward to the conversation.
Great. And then just over to you both, Nina and then Mary Beth, for introductions for yourselves.
Mary Beth, you. Hi, I'm Mary Beth Postman. I am Deputy Director of Waterkeeper Alliance. Waterkeeper Alliance is an umbrella group for the 350 waterkeepers across the globe in 46 countries. We have about 175 in the United States, and some of you are on this call. So hello there, my friends, and maybe some of you from other countries. But so nice to be here and happy to help.
And I'm Nina Facione. I'm the Vice President of Philanthropy at Defenders of Wildlife. We are a national conservation organization that focuses on wildlife and habitat conservation, primarily in North America, but with some international components that I may mention later during our discussion that are relevant to today's discussion.
Awesome. Go ahead and advance to the next slide, Madeline. Wonderful. Thank you for both of those introductions. And a huge shout out to everyone who took the time to fill out our pre-webinar survey, some of which, we've posted a lot of the findings here, and which we'll dig into a little bit more throughout the interview portion of the webinar. But at a quick glance, just to kind of relay some of the information that we found from what you told us, many of you are still sending solicitations out, albeit with maybe some alterations. A significant portion of you, 91%, have transitioned already to virtual meetings and events. That's wonderful to see. A little bit more than half of you are planning Earth Day festivities that are just around the corner, believe it or not. And also you're looking for creative ideas on replacing canceled events. And that, of course, has a lot of anxiety to it, as you are all noting, but we are so encouraged by the fact that 100% of you responded that you're excited to learn from their peers during this roundtable webinar. So that's what we're here for. We're here to provide you with the overarching webinars that have been hosted by our co-CEO, Patrick Schmidt, and then also having these really sector-specific webinars as well to get into the nitty-gritty within these sectors. Wonderful. Next slide, please. And we also asked you to submit some creative ideas that you're working on right now amidst all of this craziness. And so here are just some of the ideas that were submitted to us, as well as just showing kind of how you're adapting to this uncertain environment. And that's ranging from, establishing new types of funds, to engaging on social media to deliver saplings to individuals who subscribe to your newsletters, to live streaming tours of your plant gardens, which I'm definitely going to have to join at some point. And lastly, beginning to host these live lunch lectures on cool topics like wild turkeys, longleaf forests, and much more. So again, so encouraged by all of this creativity that's going on right now. And we're just really impressed by that. So I'm going to turn it over now to Madeline, and Nina, and Mary Beth to talk more about what they're doing with their organizations.
Great, thanks, Nick. So let's dive into the Q&A section with Mary Beth and Nina. Thank you both again for being here. And again, thank you to everyone who filled out that pre-survey. So useful. We really want this to be as inclusive as possible. So before I ask you questions, Nina and Mary Beth, I'm going to read some results from those surveys to help tee us up, and what responses we've gotten from folks so far and how they're feeling about each question, and then we can dive in together to learn more about how you and your teams are focused now in the midst of this crisis. So the first question that we asked is about how folks' teams are feeling about working from home. So we're all, a lot of folks are feeling anxious, unsurprisingly. I'm definitely feeling anxious myself. Much of the time. Some of us are feeling lonely. 41% are happy, so that's really nice to see. Some are eager, 28% are energized, 24% are confused. I know I can also relate to that one as well. 20% are sad, scared, and excited. No one was angry, which I was pretty surprised to see that. I was a little angry a couple weeks ago when I wasn't allowed to go on my honeymoon, but we got to put this all in perspective, right? There are really big challenges going on. So I was able to put that into perspective, and I would say 0% angry today for myself as well. So with that, Nina, how are you and your team currently feeling about working from home?
Yes. So first of all, thank you to Nick and Madeline for inviting me on today. I've shared with both of you, and you know that we're big fans of FreeWill over at Defenders of Wildlife. So I'm delighted. It's lovely to be part of this community, and it was lovely to have an excuse to wash my hair today. So thank you for that. So it's interesting, the impacts on our development team at Defenders. So we're 18 people strong and comprised of planned giving, foundations, mid-level and major donors, and some very important development operations folks. And I think the impact on our team overall is much less than on some of our program colleagues that literally do work out in the field and are stymied in some of their work. That said, it impacts us in various ways. So our foundations team has joked that there's really not a whole lot of difference for them being shut in their office writing a grant proposal, being shut in an office at home writing a grant proposal, and they have a lot of grant proposals due at the end of March. So they just grabbed their laptops and kept cranking. For those of us that are more outward facing, obviously it impacted us with our donor visits, and we are being very, very creative with keeping donors engaged, and we're doing calls and we're doing emails, and we put out requests to all Defenders staff to see if anybody else wanted to make calls, and had over 30 volunteers who are willing to call donors. So we think we're going to be able to reach about 300 people with our trusty team of colleagues. So we're impacted, but managing forward.
That's amazing. And I think you've raised such a good point, right? That depending on your role, perhaps is going to affect how you're dealing and impacted through this crisis. If you're used to working from home or in solitude, it might not be as much of a change. But if you're used to, being on the front lines, it's definitely going to be a little bit different and take some more time to adapt. Have you seen that, over the past month or so, that folks are feeling a little bit more optimistic, a little bit more sort of settled in their roles, or do you see that there's maybe some ebb and flow there?
Yeah, a great question. The first few weeks of this remote work seemed to be insane for everyone, not just my team, my husband who's in his office upstairs and my neighbor friends. And so there was this whole learning to transition and learning to remote work and learning new technology in some cases. And then there was the whole COVID thing, reading up and joining webinars, and so it was very busy. I feel like all of us have settled into slightly better routine, setting boundaries and structure and such. So yes, it's been quite the learning curve.
Makes sense. Thank you so much, Nina. How about you, Mary Beth? How about you and your team? How are you experiencing this so far?
Our team has ebb and flowed over the course of a couple of weeks. First, our offices are in Manhattan. And so we had to start working remotely earlier on. And so we had good systems in place by the time it got into crisis and shelter at home. And we're talking to a lot of our water keepers who had to cancel a lot of events and giving them guidance on that and how to handle it. Our team is always focused on 6, 9 months, a year, 18 months, like what's due, what's coming up. So it's a lot of forward thinking, which has been great. It's a little anxious about what our new normal will be. Talking to different foundations and corporations on what their new priorities will be, if they will change, and just really keeping touch because there are friends in these areas. Like working with you guys, we love FreeWill and talk to Marley. I think the second day, like, how are you? Where are you? But talking to all our donors and talking to them, just checking in, and it was really great to have those early webinars with you guys of being thoughtful and kind, and just like we can still be effective, but to really just check in with folks to make sure everyone's doing okay.
I love that. And it's so, similar to my experience, that I find that when I'm able to really connect with folks, even though it's virtual, that it's not in person, it makes the experience so much better. And it's a great opportunity for me to just mention that if anyone hasn't yet seen this, on our website, we have some tips and strategies and resources that we'll make sure to send out to everyone at the end of this webinar, to make sure that you have access to some of these really good and easy ways to make work from home a little bit more accessible and normal. So we'll make sure that you get those. in your inbox. So moving on to the next survey question. We asked everyone whether they've transitioned to virtual meetings and events, and we've seen that about 60% of folks have that they have already alternative plans in place. Some are 33% are transitioning, but they don't necessarily have those plans already set. Some have said that no, they don't. They haven't yet transitioned to virtual events, but they do expect to cancel. And others say that no, but they expect to proceed with their events. So for you, Nina, how are you and your team working on this? Are you transitioning fully to virtual events? Do you know exactly what your plans will be for shifting online?
Yeah, it's varied. We have had to cancel some events, and we had to cancel, sadly, our annual Yellowstone workshop trip that's very popular with donors. We are still holding off on determining what we do with our annual awards gala, which is in the fall. So we're, watching day by day on that one. But we have done some fun things in transitioning those things we had to cancel. So one example is we had a lobby day scheduled for this spring, and we're doing a virtual lobby day. And I'm really excited that we have 22 supporters signed up to lobby 24 legislators. So that seems like pretty good numbers. And one little upside is that one of our very good donor from a very important state, Montana, could not make it to our DC in-person lobby day, but he is joining us for virtual lobby day, could be just because it will be less time for him. And so they're trying to look at the little upsides to various things. There was that one. And then the final thing is, of course, all the visits that we had planned, all the donor visits have moved to virtual meetings. We are offering calls, I mentioned, with our program leads, and those are popular. And we have done some webinars on our substance matter. So those have gotten a good response because everybody's sitting at home with, with time on their hands. So,
right.
So yeah, some upsides amongst the challenges.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Seeing the silver lining in everything. And a virtual lobby day sounds like it will definitely be a hit. I mean, you can definitely do that over the phone. So much luck to you there with that. Mary Beth, how about your team? How are you transitioning and experiencing that transition with meetings and events?
Yeah, so we host a global conference every other year, and so we had to transition that to a virtual one. It was supposed to be in June in Miami, and so we're in the process of transitioning that all over and making sure our presenters can still present and making sure they have everything set up, which is now really great, is now knowing that everyone can set up, because we have a hard time during the regular year doing webinars sometimes. So now we know everyone has it upgraded at home, so that makes it easier for us. So transitioning there. A recurring theme among our waterkeepers is just really emails and blogs about you can still learn about the environment while staying at home. You can still be informed. And so our Mahandi River Waterkeeper in India released a series of videos with tips on what to do while India is under their 3-week lockdown. Our San Francisco Baykeeper sent an email out with the staff's favorite yoga feeds, documentary films, books, and coloring pages. And Ottawa Riverkeeper hosted a Facebook Live event to answer questions from supporters, which range from how long does a sturgeon live to when must we remove our ice fishing huts. So it's just really just engaging folks in a different way and doing it virtually. So it's been really fun to watch the creativity.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. There's so much industriousness to be had, and it sounds like you're really adapting well and making sure that everyone feels like there's something that is there for them. We all have so much more time on our hands now that we can't do a lot of the things that we're used to. So what we're seeing is that donors are, the most responsive than they've ever been before. So, they're more likely to open up your Facebook Live or your educational material. So amazing that you're keeping that up. The next question was about how COVID-19 is affecting the positioning of your mission. I found this really interesting, and thank you again to everyone for sharing your thoughts and feedback on this. Some folks are feeling like that this time is highlighting the necessity of their mission and feeling super relevant and that it's more important than ever. But others are feeling very differently and feeling that it's deprioritized and that they're having trouble positioning themselves in the midst of this really overwhelming public health crisis. So how, I'll start with you this time, Mary Beth. How are you feeling about this at Waterkeeper and thinking about your mission in the midst of COVID-19 and communicating it?
Yeah, I mean, to us, clean water is the first thing they tell you is to wash your hands. You need clean water to do that. And so, it's a public health for sure issue, and it's totally relevant. But also in the United States, the Environmental Protection Agency issued a sweeping discretionary suspension of enforcement of environmental laws.
Mm-hmm.
And they pegged it to COVID-19 pandemic. But so even though it suggests that the agency is not going to hold polluters legally responsible for those vital enforcement requirements, such as monitoring or limiting discharges of pollution to water, there's no end date. And so we're making sure that's our job as water keepers, to keep enforcing the laws even when our government fails to act. But it's also notable that at the same time, EPA is telling polluters not to worry about enforcement, they're continuing to refuse basic requests from the public to extend comment periods on proposed rules.
Mm-hmm.
And so just dealing with that double standard really makes us relevant, and really it's another good talking point to our donors.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so important to not lose sight of the really critical work that still needs to happen, even in the midst of something as terrible as COVID-19. So thanks for sharing that. How about you, Nina? How about positioning defenders of wildlife?
Two different aspects of this. And the first one, I'll feed off of what Mary Beth just said, that the administration is still trying to push through harmful laws and regulations in the midst of this madness. And while everybody's distracted, they're looking at it as an excuse to pass harmful bills against the Endangered Species Act, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, the National Environmental Policy Act. And so we, like Mary Beth said, we have been working with our members not only to fight the individual issues as they pop up, but really even just this morning, we sent an appeal out to our folks, or an alert out to our membership, asking them to try to stop the administration from pushing through these policy changes, or at least slow down the comment periods and such until the COVID-19 crisis is done. So we still have wildlife to save and habitats to consider, and the anti-environmental forces out there are not stopping their efforts. So we need to stay strong on that. The other aspect of our mission is that Defenders has long been at the forefront of fighting the illegal trade in wildlife and working to stop trafficking. And as folks on the phone probably have read, it's possible, not definitive yet, that this whole disease started from a wild bat, possibly with a pangolin as an intermediary host, and then when it goes into humans. Pangolins are highly imperiled. Many bat species are imperiled. And so our work to stop trafficking and wildlife trade is not only relevant for conserving wildlife, but clearly has direct human implications as well. So we partnered with other groups on a letter that went to the World Health Organization, the UN Environment, the UNEP Environmental Program, and the World Organization for Animal Health, calling on an end to these live animal markets, or the wet markets, as you've heard it referred to in the news. And so groups are coming together to fight this, and maybe we'll have some success at shutting down some of these markets that are just frankly disgusting in terms of sustainability of wildlife and humaneness, as well as presenting these human threats.
Thank you so much for that. It's so poignant, and it just so well highlights, Nina, the interconnectivity of environment and human health, and the fact that we are part of this environment, and it's all connected. Before we move on, I want to flag that please, if you have questions or comments, make sure to chat those to us so that we can get to that in a few minutes on the Q&A. So moving on here. how is your organization changing its fundraising strategy in response to this crisis? So about 60% of folks are still sending solicitation with some adjustments. Some are suspending solicitations for now, about 17% are suspending. And some say no, that they haven't changed any of their fundraising strategy. And some are saying no, but it's being considered. So Mary Beth, how is Waterkeeper Alliance adjusting your major giving, plan giving strategy in this moment?
We are still moving forward with our direct mail program. We knew that more people are at home and going to be opening their mail and actually paying attention to it, which we've actually has seen. Our March giving was better than last year's March giving. And so we're still tracking that for April. It's, we're really careful making sure that in the direct mail that we mention coronavirus if we can get to it as well. So our April was really tied into talking about it and just being thoughtful, really making sure that we're not tone deaf in what people are going through and making sure you have options, instead of just, if you can't donate at this time and you're shopping, pick us, choose our local Waterkeeper on Amazon Smile. Also with Plan Giving, we were planning anyway for World Water Day and Earth Day. We still did that stuff about free will and your plan giving and just communicating it, really making sure we're effective but thoughtful in this moment.
Definitely, definitely. We are seeing that exactly right. That as long as you acknowledge that you make sure that you communicate, your value in this moment that's unique, it's folks are really paying attention. So thanks for sharing that. How about you, Nina? What about the Defenders of Wildlife?
Pretty much what Mary Beth said. Same. Our position is that we can solicit. We can, should not be tone deaf. There are huge things happening in the world that everybody is concerned about, rightly so. Our issues are not more important right now than this global pandemic. That said, our donors still do care about our mission. That's why they support us and they want to hear from us. So it's partly engagement and partly folks do still want to and have the means to contribute. And so we are here and offering them that opportunity if they can. One nice appeal that just went out yesterday, I think, was by our plan giving team, and frankly, the language may have come from FreeWill, but we did a nice appeal that said, these are tough times, and I hope you and your loved ones are well, and supporting your favorite causes during this tough time may not be as easy now, but there's a way you can support these things you love with a gift for the future. So, and as you have shared with us, and we have seen, people are thinking about their legacies now and writing their wills. So that's one way that we've reached out.
Definitely. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And just also to let everyone know on the call, we have, again, some more free resources on how to think about not being tone deaf in this moment and sending some really thoughtful emails. And we have some templates for that for you that will make sure to get in your hands as well. So moving on to our last question, we sort of wanted to end on somewhat, hopefully, of a positive note and thinking about Earth Day and something that the entire environmental community thinks about each year. And so what we've seen is that folks are thinking about this. Some folks, about 60% of organizations are planning Earth Day festivities. Some haven't, but are interested in hearing what their peers are doing. Some examples are people are compiling photos outside and sort of creating an online repository for those. Some are creating marketing campaigns, like a Be 1% Better virtual campaign on Earth Day. Some folks are going to do a webinar to present water quality data. That might have even come from one of your Waterkeeper friends, Mary Beth. Tree planting, designated time. So just really forming a community around this day, even if we can't be together. So what are your plans? Nina, I'll start with you.
Yeah, those are fun. I love seeing all the
Yeah.
ideas from folks. That's awesome. And it'll be fun to still celebrate the environment as a community. We are putting out a lot of content. It's going to be a very busy day for our CEO. So we're doing a video from our CEO. We'll do a blog with our CEO, Q&A with Jamie Wrapup Clark, our president and CEO. And then we'll do we're talking about a Zoom in with Defenders. Will be our CEO and a special guest. It'll be a surprise because amongst us, it's not quite pinned down yet, but we have a couple of good friends who are well-known kind of environmental celebrities, and so looking at doing a conversation about the biodiversity crisis in a Zoom in with Defenders.
So cool, awesome. Thanks for that. How about you, Mary Beth?
So we are continuing with our plans for Earth Day, which is really highlighting plastic pollution, and that we are working with one of our corporate partners and influencers and doing a lot of social media, primarily a lot of Facebook, peer-to-peer giving, but also with a lot of actions people can take, a pledge to reduce, a pledge to bring your own reusable bag, find your local Waterkeeper group, get involved, how you can help them with plastic consumption and reduction. Calculate your own personal plastic consumption. Work for local legislation to reduce plastic bag use, if you can do that in the states that you're allowed to still do that. Push corporations to use less plastic, and advocate for financial incentives for companies moving away from plastic. We've been working with National Geographic Society to create a plastic pollution curriculum for our waterkeepers so that they can really create some prevention plans geographically, socioeconomically, and in political context to really make a difference in the plastic pollution problem.
That's amazing. Thank you both so much. I'm so inspired just listening to that and knowing that, there's so much we can do from home to be inspired by the people in these communities, listening to them, setting goals for the future, and then, taking action. There's so much that we can do from home, and your organizations are helping everyone realize that and have the tools they need to actually do that. So thank you both so much for that. Let's now transition to your questions. If you haven't had a chance yet, please do enter your questions and feedback into the chat box. And while you do that, we're going to give you about a minute to watch this beautiful video from our partner, Save the Redwoods League. It just gives us a moment of calm to look at this beautiful forest. So I hope you enjoy that, and we'll see you in about a minute and a half. Oh, okay. Let's try to do that again. Okay, good.
There we go.
Does it work?
It's loading.
There we go.
Technology.
Oh, here we go. Wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without it, right? There you go.
We thought maybe we should do it one more time, but
Exactly.
we'll hold on. We'll hold on.
We'll send you the link.
It was lovely.
Oh, that was really nice. I know for myself, I'm over in New York City right now, so it was really nice to just watch that for that minute, to feel like I'm in the forest and forest bathing, away from a crazy city right now. So thank you for sharing that, Madeline. And again, thanks to you both, Mary Beth and Nina, for your wonderful responses to the questions that we put together. They were really, really informative. And while you were talking, there was a lot of conversation coming in through the chat box with all of our other attendees. So we've been working on putting together a handful of those questions, and we'll kind of take these questions up until close to the end of the webinar, which is just 10 minutes out. So we'll try to answer them as much as possible. I'll pose them to you both, and we can just have a few minutes to go back and forth with them. One question that came in was asking, is anyone planning to take advantage of the Spring Giving Tuesday campaign on May 5th? And if so, how are you positioning environmental protection alongside direct response nonprofit needs? So I'll pose that to you both, maybe Nita, or you guys can decide who wants to take it first. But that was one of the questions.
Mary Beth, you were talking about that yesterday, I think, if you want to.
Yeah, so we just are looking into Giving Tuesday now, which is on May 5th, 2020, Cinco de Mayo. And so trying to figure out the right messaging. We do feel, you know, we kind of check in on our messaging on a week by week, sometimes day by day basis. And so really just putting together, talking to, I think our comms team had a meeting today with our influencer group and really getting the best recommendations as well, which I'm happy to share what those are, but really looking at Facebook definitely is where a huge focus is. What we've noticed is a lot of people who went off of it have come back on to really stay connected. And so a focus on sharing and a focus on peer-to-peer giving. A lot of focus on pledges as well for Giving Tuesday. So just trying not to be, again, tone deaf, you know, give people, but no, everyone should be involved in that day. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Nina, any thoughts from your end on that?
Not very different. We are similarly going out with some messaging with an acknowledgement and just recognizing the connection between human health and the environment, and something that is relevant to our times.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing those, your answers to those. There was another kind of along the same vein kind of question coming up in terms of any types of marketing campaigns or anything that you're doing to start capturing maybe some of the stimulus checks and the funds coming from donors during this time that are correlated with the $2.2 trillion package that was just signed by Congress, I believe, last week. So any thoughts on what you're planning to do with maybe some of those stimulus checks going out to individuals?
We haven't looked into that because figuring that was something that would be a personal thing, $1,200 for family. And so we haven't really, we looked at more at the protection payment plan and work towards making sure our water keepers knew to apply for that and because that helps them through June 30th and keeping staff on. And so that's primarily been our focus from the stimulus bill.
Likewise, we have looked at the small nonprofit, and small being less than 500 people, so it's a pretty decent size protection plans, and shoring up our own staff and such through the long haul of what will be hopefully faster rather than slower economic recovery.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed also, just as you're both talking about this right now, there's a lot of people who are asking if, it's really great to see this community right now on the webinar. So many people are asking for each other's emails to continue to network, you know, beyond this webinar. And so I just wanted to shout that out really quick, because that's just really awesome that we're seeing that right now. To that point, we're also going to be planning to hold roundtable breakout groups. It'll be kind of a second version of this environment webinar, which everyone is invited to join. We're going to be sending out a post-webinar survey in just a second. And so that's where a lot of that information would be, to say if you're interested in joining that next webinar, where we'll have thematic breakout groups to talk more about fundraising or communications, these types of suggestions, or even ideas that are coming from yourselves. So we'll post that right now for you all to answer that survey. We have a few minutes left. So just wanted to kind of get back to some of the other questions that are coming in. One person mentioned that their gala is also in the fall, and they would really love to hear how COVID-19 has impacted planning events in the fall, particularly. What are kind of more of your ideas for the fall and maybe even beyond as well?
Boy, I wish I had a crystal ball for that one with our 300-person gala on tap for September. We are frankly talking about whether or not to be proactive. And again, always looking for a bright side. For years, we've been talking about whether we move our fall event to a spring event, and nothing at all is determined, but we are bouncing the idea around that maybe this is the universe forcing us to change the timing of this event anyway. So, and maybe just hold off until spring and start to make it a spring event, which spring is a lovely time in Washington, D.C. with our cherry blossom. So we are following the news and the science as closely as anybody else. And I wish I had any kind of more definitive answer to share.
Yeah, for us, we do an annual comedy event, and we figure now would be a great time to be talking to comedians and brighten up our days and talking to them. But we're looking at doing something in November, but knowing that we don't know what November holds, and to have a plan B, meaning do we need to switch it to the spring, and just being really just talking that through with the venue and with the talent, and everyone's just been wonderful and wants to help and is ready to deploy when the time is right.
Yeah, that's great that you have you're planning for different scenarios. I know we've mentioned that on some of our other webinars led by Patrick as well, making sure that there are backups in place for multiple months ahead, because it's so hard to predict. So thank you. A kind of a somewhat similar related question came in. Someone wanted to ask if they were kind of posing to the whole audience, of course you both are welcome to answer, around getting pushback at all from the board on continuing fundraising efforts or planning these events, virtual events, during this crisis. Have either of you noticed that at all?
I've heard that from our waterkeepers, from their a lot, and providing them info so that they can give to their boards to say now's not the time to stop, and really giving a lot of data based on 2008 as well, that those who stopped and it really hurt. And so a lot of information from you guys and other webinars passing along, but that's definitely been a concern for a lot of our waterkeepers.
Yeah.
We have not had pushback. Our CEO is staying very closely connected to the board at this time, and they have been very supportive. So yeah, fortunate in that regard.
Yeah. Perfect. And I'll just mention as well to everyone who's listening into, our landing page has a wealth of information on just in terms of communications practices, templates, other types of resources that are all available to you to check out. And again, we're recording this session right now. So you all will be able to check out our landing page, click into the environment image for the roundtable. You'll be able to see the recording of this presentation and interview there. Let's see, we have just about 1 minute left, 2 minutes maybe. Quick question on, let's see. There's a question that came out, would Nina be willing to share the plan giving communication that she had mentioned just went out?
Yeah.
That's something,
yes, we would. And again, we may have gripped some of that language from the FreeWill website, so we're happy to share. But yeah, of course, we are happy to share some of that language. Shall I work through you all to do that?
Yeah, Yeah, we can definitely do that. We'll be sure that that's there. That's also within the email marketing template toolkit that's on our landing page as well that you're able to access. So that concludes the webinar. Madeline, if you just advance really quick.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
This is just some of those images about the resources that we have on the landing page. And then finally, just another post on the survey, post-webinar survey that we would absolutely love for all of you to fill out. Big thank you again to Mary Beth, Nina, for taking the time to speak with us about what you're doing at your organizations. That was phenomenal. And thank you, Madeline, for having a lovely discussion with them.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.